Welcome, everyone, to another episode of React Native Radio. I'm Tim Jung, and joining me on the panel today is Ricky Romero.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
And James as well.
Hey, guys.
And joining us today is our guest, Julien, who I'd like to welcome and thank for coming on. Julien, if you want to introduce yourself real quick and you can say your full name for us, which I think you're going to pronounce a lot better than I can.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So my name is Julien Lavigne du Cadet, and I'm a VP of Engineering at Zoe. And Zoe is the company behind the Covid Symptom Study app, which has been quite successful in the UK recently.
Early in my career, I figured out which jobs were worth working at and which ones weren't, mostly by trial and error. I created a system that I used to find jobs and later contracts as a freelancer. If you're looking for a job or trying to figure out where you should go next, then check out my book, The Max Coder's Guide to Finding Your Dream Developer Job. The book walks you through figuring out what you want, vetting companies that meet your criteria, meeting that company's employees, and getting them to recommend you for a job. Don't settle for whoever has listed their job on the job board. Go out and proactively find the job you'll love. Buy the book at devchat.tv/jobbook. That's devchat.tv/jobbook.
Great. Thanks for coming on. So just like Julien said, it's for COVID-19 an app he built. And really, this is super, I think relevant to a lot of our listeners right now. We've kind of mentioned it on the podcast a few times that at least us on the panel have been in lockdown. We're still in lockdown at the time of this recording, basically, although some things are kind of starting to open up and whatnot. So basically, I think, everyone knows this has been something that's affecting the entire world and their lives. So it's really cool to see, that we have an app to talk about today that is so relevant to what everyone's facing.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about the app and what it does?
Sure. So the app is basically asking people to report symptoms, whether they believe they are COVID-19 related or not. So the kind of thing that the app would ask you to do daily is to say, do you have a fever? Do you have a cough? Do you have loss of smell or plenty of other things? And that's also cross-reference with basically a lot of information that you give on registration, such as, your age, your gender, if you are following some kind of treatment. And based on those kind of two set of data, we've been doing a lot of research that led to very interesting discoveries on COVID. So, for example, one of the things that we found out is one of the best predictors for whether people have COVID-19 or not is not whether they have a fever or cough, which was basically where we started. It's something called anosmia, which is whether you have a loss of smell or taste. So 2/3 of the people that have COVID actually have what's called anosmia, whereas there's a lot of people that have COVID and that definitely don't have fever or cough. So basically, we've been working with scientists across the board, but mostly from KCL and so King's College London and MGH, Massachusetts General Hospital, to kind of gather all that data through the app, and therefore we've got a huge data set to do a lot of data science on, a lot of very, very useful research.
That's cool, man. It seems like you guys got it out pretty fast. Like how long did it take you guys to develop this?
Yeah, so that was a very, very interesting story because we've been working with those people for a while, but on very different topics. Zoe fundamentally is about nutrition. It's not we're doing nothing COVID related before, obviously. When the scientists from KCL reached out to us, they were like, so we're closing down because of lockdown. And what would make a lot of sense is for us to have a lot of data to do extra research on. And basically, we've started to look into COVID-19 as something we could help. So when they reached out to us, they were like, so can you build a mobile app for us? And we say, yes. Can you build it for tomorrow evening? And we said, let us try.
Oh, man, so what an experience, I bet.
Yeah, so basically we went from an idea, which was literally just a discussion between KCL and Zoe, to an app released to the general public in about 5 days. And 36 hours after launch, we had more than 1 million people using the app.
Man, that's a lot of people, and that's really fast, 1 week. How was it your experience, building it out? Like, can you kind of go over like your process and what you had to do to get it up and, out into the public?
Sure. So there are a few things. The first thing to know is that this is actually the first time we've ever built a production React Native app. So before that, we were building a full native app. So for us, it was kind of really new. And our only experience was basically a couple of weeks of playing with React Native before that. So when we started, basically, we didn't know much about it. But we still thought that was the only way we could release an app very, very quickly. So, back to your point, basically it all started with some kind of kickoff call with the scientists, finding out, what was the fastest things we could build for them. And then it was just a series of massive shortcuts, basically removing everything that was not absolutely required from day one. So we kind of iterated over the weekend. Basically, we assembled a team of 6 people. There were 2 people working on the back end, 2 people working on the mobile app, kind of me included, even though I'm not a mobile engineer. And then some support from a product designer and from someone kind of doing the legal and data privacy aspect, which is key for a project like that. And basically, we kind of iterated over the first 36 hours, and our goal was to get one version of the app that was good enough to pass the approval for the Google Play Store and Apple Store. And so we actually managed to get something that was just functional enough for review in about 36 hours after we had the first call. Like, it was really, really rough on the edges, but that was good enough. And the thing that was interesting is that almost from the beginning, we thought that actually what would take the longest was actually getting the app approved on the store. We just did not realize how bad that would be at that point. So we iterated quite quickly, then push a version on Friday evening towards midnight or something like that. Went to bed because everybody was exhausted. And then the next day we started to try to ask ourselves, when is that likely to be actually approved? And we started doing some research. And at that point, lockdown was pretty new for everybody, and both Apple and Google Play were advertising that, hey, it could take, at least a week to get any kind of app approved. And actually, if you're COVID-19 related, it's going to be really, really hard for you to get anything out on the stores. So at that point, we basically started to reach out to our network in every possible way. And the thing that helped us is that the app is not just, we did not do that like it's not a commercial initiative. It's basically backed by research, by proper universities. And that's kind of the thing that enable any COVID-19 app to be released on those platforms. So we had like the proper paperwork to kind of prove that we're backed by the right people, that it was like real research project. And anyway, it took us about 2 days or 3 days to get it approved, basically find the right people. And on Monday evening, basically we had both Apple Store and Google Play approved our app. So we did like a couple of iterations over the weekend, used that time to add a few extra features. And on, I think, Tuesday morning, so about 4 or 5 days after we actually started the project, we were ready to launch to the world. So
when did it go live?
So it went live towards the 20th of March. I think it was the 19th, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, towards the end of March. It's been out
for a while.
So it's been there for 2 months, yes.
Yeah, 2 months. How's your experience so far now that it's out in the public? Like with using React Native, like do you have any crash analytics or anything like that?
So we're not great in terms of analytics for crash, but one of the things that we did is that since we weren't sure if our app was crashing more or less than app of similar size, basically reach out to Google and ask them, can you benchmark us against other apps? And our crash rate is around 0.2%, so 0.2%.
That's really good.
Which,
wow, awesome.
Which I believe is actually quite good. We weren't sure at the time, but we were reasonably happy with that. And that's quite interesting considering that now we've got 3.5 million users. So basically every kind of device that ever been conceived is probably has been running our app in one way or another, because we don't have like a lot of constraint in terms of versions. I think it's basically Android 5.0 and upwards, and iOS 10 and upwards, which is really like the vast majority of the devices out there.
Wow, that's really awesome, especially like the amount of speed, like how fast you guys got it out. To be doing this great, that's a huge accomplishment. Props to you guys for, really getting that out into the public. I'm sure it's been super helpful for like the public to actually, have, somewhere to input this information and kind of get some feedback on it. Because, I'm sure it's for us, it's really, a scary time. So great work on that. So how's your experience with like, your back end, handling all those requests with like, 3 million people? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. So the backend has been quite an interesting emotional roller coaster, because so the first day when we launched, one of our founder, Tim Spector, which is also working at KCL, and this is how this partnership started, was supposed to be on radio, kind of, just announcing the app. And like literally 5 minutes before, it's canceled. So the whole dev team is basically down and say, oh, we did all that work and, we thought we had a great plan to announce it, and it just didn't work. But it still started to tweet about it. And actually just that was enough to kind of starting the small bubble effect. But during the first day, it was growing steadily, but still kind of reasonably under control. And we ended up the first day, so like about 12 hours after launch, with about 200,000 people registering on the app. The funny thing happened the next day. And I think basically what happened is that, the press in general needed a bit of time to catch up on the news. And they started releasing, articles the next day, the next morning, kind of both on print, but also on TV or radio. And basically at 7:55 in the morning, which is, very, very early, all backend blew up entirely under load. So we had like more people at 7:55 than at any point in time the previous day, which was very, very surprising. We were quite lucky in some ways because, that's the power of the cloud. You've got quite a few options in terms of scaling. And basically the thing that didn't work for us was the database was just not big enough. So at that point, we just pressed the button to upgrade it and went with the biggest instance we could put our hands on. So we went with something like with like 96 cores and like 400 gigabytes of memory, something like that. And that was actually just, enough to survive the day. So since then, we did quite a few optimization, but interestingly, there wasn't ever a spike as big as this one because we were really at the peak of the virality that day. We've had some very interesting scalability issues, mostly around the fact that we're still doing quite a bit of TV, or at least Tim Spector, our founders. And whenever we're on TV, whenever it's on any program like that, your traffic goes from 100 to 500 in the span of literally 5 seconds. And that means, auto scaling is great, but auto scaling actually doesn't scale that quickly. So, you need about, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes for your instances to rescale properly and find the right size. So we always have some latency spikes. So the system is not down, but it's not perfect.
We have that issue with our mobile app. So a little bit about us. Me and Tim work at Activision working on the Call of Duty companion app. And so when we do a push notification, we run into the same issue where like we do a push and then we get like a huge spike and then like our servers are trying to catch up because we didn't scale it high enough or something just didn't go right. So our servers are trying to catch up, so I totally understand what you guys are going through, and it's pretty crazy when that happens. And especially it's harder for you guys because we kind of know like, okay, we're going to send a push, we got to scale up. But for you guys, it's probably just random. Like, it's just like somebody's talked about you guys on the news or some article came out and then you guys just spike. So I'm sure it's kind of hard to kind of keep up with it.
Yeah, we have exactly the same behavior as you have, because we've got push notifications sent daily, and whenever we send those push notifications, we see the traffic like doubling. But that part we've handled on the back end, because basically instead of just sending it as quickly as we can, we slowly ramp up to make sure that it leaves time for the infrastructure to also ramp up properly. So we're really down to TV is really the thing that kills us more than anything. That's always like a 5x traffic spike coming from absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious. How expensive is it to run an app that has like millions of downloads and everything? Is it kind of expensive?
It is. Well, I guess it depends what expensive means for people. But to give you an order of magnitude, the infrastructure side of it cost us maybe about £15,000 per month. That can be quite massively optimized, if I'm honest. So there's basically two big components to it. One is the database, which, as I said, at some point we went with the biggest one we could, and now we've basically scaled down that quite a bit already. And mostly because we did a lot of optimization on database itself. And then you've got really the front end. So in our case, we're running in GCP, and we're running in something called App Engine, which really has the auto scaling. And that part is basically, 50% of the cost, and database being the other 50%. We're running in Python, and the way we've built the app is not like fully optimized in terms of having a lot of concurrent requests. So there's definitely a lot we could do there to spend a lot less money.
That is an incredible success story. I cannot believe you got that out in 2 days of development, did you say? That's scarcely believable, actually. How many developers did you say you had working on it? Was it just 4 or 5 of you guys?
There were 4 people writing code, 2 on the back end and 2 on the front end. So yes, the very, very first version that was submitted in about 36 hours. Then we had an extra 2 to 3 days to iterate before we had the final version approved, the one that actually got published and released to the public the next day, basically. So yeah, 5 days total for.
On your sort of the React Native devs you pulled in, you're all not React Native originally. You've all moved to it just for this particular app.
So we had one developer that had about a year of experience with React Native that joined us about 2 weeks before, 2 to 3 weeks before. So it was a very interesting onboarding scenario for him. And he's a great React Native developer, but also has been a solo React Native developer in the startup. So not necessarily exposed to the latest and greatest things in React, such as, hooks and things like that. And then initially the second person working on that was actually myself, and I had not done any serious engineering work for about 4 years. So I've been managing people more than writing code. But I had a lot of TypeScript / web experience from many, many years ago. And the other thing I had for myself, and the reason why I actually help on that project, is a few weeks before I was actually playing with React Native at home, because I thought it could be a very interesting way for us to build our main nutrition app. So I had about 30 hours of experience with React Native total when we started working on the Covid Symptom Study app.
If you're a front-end developer looking for remote work, then I recommend G2I, a React and React Native focused hiring platform that will connect you directly with their clients that need your skill set. What makes G2I a unique hiring experience is that they spend the time marketing you to their clients of your choice. G2I is a team of engineers that technically vets you up front. If you pass their vetting, their clients have agreed to skip their initial interview process, saving you time and energy getting your next gig. They take care of all the hard work for you so you can get focused on development. To join G2I, go to g2i.co and apply.
That must have been really intense to go and push that app out in that case. What did you find you sort of tripped over in that case? If you're kind of relatively new to React Native, was there anything that really took you by surprise, either in a good way or in a bad way?
I think there were a lot of good surprise, in the sense it's very easy to get started. At least if you're coming from a web development background, there's a lot of similarities. So my experience was more with Angular than React, but React itself, when I started learning about it, it was very obvious to me. It just clicked and made sense, and the learning curve I thought was just really, really good. I think that the things for example, I struggle with, and that those are mostly not related to the COVID Symptom Study app, but more when I did my experiment before at home, was all the setup, the debugging environment and etc. was just something that was totally remote for me and something that took me a bit of time to get right. Expo is amazing and we use Expo, but in some ways, sometimes you end up in some scenarios where it just doesn't work and you have to restart everything and you're not entirely clear why. And I'm sure some people are a lot more experienced than I am and know exactly why, but for me, it's like just, a bit black magic sometimes. So those are the things that kind of bite us early on, I would say. And then when you're not coming from a bioengineering background, the other things that you trip over is, hey, people have a iPhone 11 and therefore you need to use a safe area view. Otherwise, your layout is just not rendering properly on those kind of device. So those things are actually quite easy once you know them. You just think about them. It's not particularly difficult. But basically, when you don't have that experience, you just have to really, really, really rapidly iterate and find out what doesn't work and fix them. Basically, you just learn on steroid.
One thing that I actually think is super interesting is, you're going through this rapid iteration process where you had to ship this app very quickly. And then one thing you kind of mentioned is that sometimes you were, adding in different features or making changes very rapidly. And rather than going through the whole submission process at times, it sounds like a lot of the time you were doing over-the-air updates to provide those changes. So what exactly were you using to deliver those over-the-air updates, and kind of just talk about that in general? Like, what things were you updating and how did that help this whole process?
Yeah, of course. So the first thing to know is basically I come from a background which is a lot more back-end or web than mobile. And for me, when I joined Zoe and inherited also the mobile team there, I was just shocked by the release cycle of mobile apps in general. I was like, why is it so difficult to get a release out? Why do you have to approve it, and etc.? Which was mostly, ignorance on my part. But to give you an idea, in the previous teams I was managing, we're doing, tens of releases per day. So suddenly being able to do only, once a week or something like that was just very, very weird for me. So it's actually one of the things that led me to look into React Native in the first place, because I knew that there was that thing called, over-the-air update. And initially I've learned about it from Cut Push from App Center. And I was just very, very curious about being able to have those very, very rapid development and release cycle. So anyway, that's one of the reasons where I ended up looking at React Native. And that's also something that indeed saved the day many, many times for the COVID Symptom Study app. Because if you want to release an app and you can't do those kind of hot push and very quick release cycle, then you have to be really, really good about quality. You just can't have something that breaks, because it may take you several days for an update to be released. Whereas when you've got something like Code Push, or in our case we use Expo again to do the over-the-air updates, if you realize that something is not good, then you fix it, you redeploy, people restart their app, they've got the latest version. So that's something I was very excited about even before doing the COVID Symptom Study app, and that's something that saved the day many, many times, because we were going so fast that we definitely did ship things that were not great, a bit broken. I don't think we had a time where it was entirely broken, like you can't do anything with the app, but there was certainly like a lot of rough edges. And for the first few days, we were basically doing many, release per week. So I think that the first week we probably did at least once per day, probably more than that. And the kind of thing we're doing at that point were adding questions, because at the beginning, that was just an attempt of helping scientists. Nobody really knew if it was going to be successful. So we had a set of questions. When we realized, after 36 hours that we had 1 million people, then suddenly they were like, oh, there's all those things that we'd like to know about, people's symptoms or people's medical conditions. And also the thing to keep in mind is that the general understanding of COVID-19 evolved very, very rapidly. Like, every few days there was a new research paper, whether it's, from the people we're working with or from some totally different research group that say, hey, actually we're finding out that, in the UK, the big news is, BAME people from the BAME background are a lot more exposed than everybody else. So suddenly that was, maybe we should start asking people about, ethnic origin, because we realized that it's actually, something where there's a lot of research to do. Or a few weeks ago, we started asking people about hormone therapies, because same thing, there was some indication that could be, putting people more or less at risk. So we just had those very, very quick release cycle to add new questions. And then at the same time, we just kind of, fixed the most obvious problem with the app. So for example, when we launched the app, we had no reset password functionality. It was just, you can create an account. If you lose your password, that's too bad. That's basically the cost of launching something, in 5 days. So that's not ideal. We're not happy with that, but that's a trade-off in the grand scheme of things that did make sense, because there was this kind of time element. So one of the other release was just, hey, let's have password reset, because yes, that's definitely something that people could use. And we had like so many emails about people losing their password and asking us to reset it manually.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's really cool that, you're going through this rapid iteration process and you're just able to use those over the air updates to continue to make sure it's a success. Because even when I think about like my project that I work on with Ricky, it's frustrating at times having this long QA cycle where, it's like, we just send the app to QA and then QA has to review and maybe there's something wrong. And then, and then you have to go through the whole app store process of getting approval, and this just takes a lot of time. So I think it was really smart that you guys kind of went the OTA route right from the beginning like that. But I guess one other thing I'm curious about too is, was there any issues you ran into with doing OTA updates? I think one thing I read in like a blog post that you wrote was that there was kind of like async issues, or there might be times where you'd want to force the user to have to go through the update, or just talk about that a little bit maybe.
Yeah, so we definitely had issue with OTA, and mostly those issues were because we did not understand it enough. So again, you have to remember the context, which is, we're new to React Native, we're new to Expo. We find this wonderful feature on Expo to just do cut push. We start using it. We start, pushing updates. And then at this point, it's really not clear to us when updates are actually rolled out to people. And in that specific case, what we realized after the fact is, by default, the way Expo push the updates is totally asynchronous on startup. So you start your app. When you restart your app, in the background, it will download the new bundle. The next time you restart, the app would restart with the latest bundle, which kind of makes a lot of sense. Except that for us, what that meant is whenever we're pushing, a new version of the app, people would use it on day one, and then have no reason to come back to the app until day two. So on day two, maybe, the app goes from is in the background back to the foreground. In that case, nothing happens. It's still, running and, no update. And then finally, at some point, they close it, restart it. They get the new version, but for the next time. So really at that point, we had like a lot of trouble understanding where people were having the latest version downloaded. And basically we've changed the behavior to kind of not enforce an update on startup, but at least make it strongly suggested, let's say. So basically we change the behavior to say you have 10 seconds on startup to download the bundle. You block on those 10 seconds. If after 10 seconds you cannot download the bundle, use the current one, otherwise restart and use this one. So at this point, we had like a lot less issues in the sense that the global rollout of new release was a lot faster. But in many ways, that's still not ideal. So since we're using Expo, we're still using actually the managed workflow, so we don't have like full control on this. But what I'd like us to do in the future basically is to take back the control and be able indeed to totally force update. And at that point, we could be a lot smarter about it. It would not necessarily be on startup. We could detect that there is a new version when you go back to the app. And at that point, you'll decide, hey, this is a mandatory upgrade. So automatically restart or do those kind of things. But Right now, we didn't go that path yet because that means ejecting from the managed workflow for Expo, which has also quite a few downsides that we want to avoid as long as possible.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And kind of on, so some other things you actually mentioned here too. So we talked about over there updates, but you also mentioned Expo. Could you actually kind of give us the full like lay of the land about what your full setup is like everything maybe that you're kind of using to ship this quickly?
Sure. So I'm going to try to not forget things, but the main things on the React Native front is we're using Expo, as mentioned, React Navigation for just changing screen. We're using Native Base for components. Using Formic and Yup for the form, and the forms are one of the most important things for us. The app is written in TypeScript. That's something we're always very, very opinionated about and saved us probably quite a few times. At the beginning, we were absolutely terrible in terms of unit tests, and we became a bit better, but we're using the classical setup about Jest, and with Jest, we're still not running end-to-end tests, and we'd like to do that. Most likely we'll do that with Detox, but that's not something that actually is existing right now. So I think that's mostly it in terms of mobile app. And in terms of backend, I mentioned it a bit before, but we're running on GCP. It's mostly written in Python and talking to a Postgres database. And then we're re-exporting the data for analysis for data science. And at that point, the people using this data are most likely going to use Jupyter Notebook and various data science library.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
So I'm actually cheating a little bit. I actually had all the different things written down from your blog post that you were using in the app. And not only did you remember all of them, you actually added a bunch of bonus stuff too. So good job on that. You had it. You nailed it. So it's great.
Thank you. I didn't realize that it was an exam.
No, yeah, it wasn't meant to be. I just I thought it might open up, some more questions about different things that you're using throughout the app. So yeah, I wasn't quizzing you, but no, I wasn't going to leave you hanging either if you didn't remember them all. So you're good.
I'd like to hear more about Native Base, actually, if you wouldn't mind, because I'm always interested in UI components. And I'd just like to know how you got on with that, how you landed on Native Base out of all the ones that are out there, because there are 4 or 5 really prevalent UI libraries that people seem to like in React Native. But Native Base is a big one. And I'd just love to know how you got on with it and how you landed on that one.
So I think for Native Base, and actually for every single piece of infrastructure that we've chosen beyond TypeScript, we just went with the most obvious choice. Is the honest answer. Yeah. Like when you don't know a lot about the ecosystem, when you're not very experienced with React Native, like we were, and if you've got those very tight deadlines, I know that the first thing you do is that you Google it. How do people do forms in React Native? They use Formic. Great. Formic is probably great. Or maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't have the time to find out. So I'm just going to find, what most people are going to use. And even if it's not awesome, at least if there is a lot of people using it, that means I should be able to find, some resources, some support, and at least some kind of paved road. So I think we went with Native Base mostly for that, because it was just one of the very obvious choices out there. So I generally have no idea if it's better for use case or worse than other alternatives. It wasn't really something that blocked us. On the other hand, it's clear that the UI for the app is not totally amazing. We're very happy. We've got very good scores on the App Store and etc. But the reality is that the UI is not super sleek, and we definitely had a few issues here and there, which are mostly also related to bad UX on our side. So, for example, the Native Base component for dropdown doesn't line wrap on Android. It does on iOS. And you could say that's kind of a bug in Native Base that they should fix. Or you could say, really, well, why do you even want to have line wrap in a drop-down? Because in terms of UX, that's not good at all. So why would you not replace that with a radio button? So we had definitely some issues like that have in some case very obvious workaround, and in some other case it was more like we were using the library not so well. But we don't have a very strong opinion on whether it's better or worse than what's called React Native Paper or some of the other alternatives out there.
Sure. And that actually neatly brings me on to the follow-up to that, which is, what did you find didn't work between the two platforms? And did you start mainly developing in iOS and then checked Android at the end, or did you do it the other way around? Or did you have them maybe both running at the same time through the whole dev process?
So we had both running at the same time, mostly because, at least when we started, the kind of team structure evolved a bit after that. But when we started, as I said, there was 2 engineers, and one was basically developing / testing with the iOS simulator, and I was testing on with the Android simulator. Mostly because I must admit I've got a Windows PC, so for me iOS is basically not an option at all.
Yeah. Sure.
But it ended up working quite well because we tested both at the same time. But that's also the problem. That also led to a few problems in the sense, for example, I mentioned a bit before, using the safe area view. And that's not something I was exposed on the kind of Android simulator because the version I used didn't have like a small bezel at the top that would cause any rendering issue. So at some point, I did a screen, and then Mike, that was the other engineer working with me, started using it. It was like, oh, the rendering is totally broken. Which is, basically how we find about safe area view, because, I think before that, it was basically just padding by 40 pixel from the top to not have to worry about it, because for him, that was like the obvious solution. Whereas for me, that would make, everything be too low and be a bit weird. So we definitely had a few issues like that. I think overall, one of the things that I found really exciting is that we do have 99% of the code base that is exactly the same on iOS and Android. So there are very little differences. There are a few about, as I said, safe area views, a few about padding again with the drop-down component on native base kind of doesn't align on the right the same way on both platforms for some reason. That might be us not doing the right thing. And we had, a few issues like that, but they are generally quite minor.
That's good. 99% shared code base is really good number as well. It sounds like you did really well with that.
Yeah, and I think, to be clear, our 99%, like it's not something I'm actually measuring, but I'm basing that on the fact that I think we're approaching about 10,000 lines of code. And out of those 10,000 lines of code, I know about 5 places where we've put an if statement to say if iOS do X, if Android do Y. So it's really good.
Yeah, that sounds really positive. Did you manage to get the whole app built with Expo without having to eject it? And then Expo did all your binaries and everything at the end as well?
Yes, we did. So actually our normal release pipeline is that we either Expo publish for OTA update or Expo build for full native release. And that works perfectly well. The part at the beginning that we didn't have automated was to take those binaries and actually push them to the Google Play or Google App Store. But from day one, we've been using binaries built by Expo, and that worked very well. The one problem we had is we ended up with various issues related to credentials and Expo, which is a bug that we hit that they fixed since. They've been extremely supportive. But at the beginning, basically, we started with kind of the free plan. We've upgraded like 48 hours after starting the project to the pay plan to be able to do bills and etc. But basically at that point, we had problem moving from one to the other, and we ended up with what they called release channel that were a bit messed up, basically. So release channel is an Expo, a concept where you say, this app is built and is using that release channel, and depending on who actually built the app, you could end up on different release channel by kind of default. And we had some trouble switching to the premium plan, which meant that for a few releases we're a bit in a weird world and setup. But beyond that, the whole setup just works out of the box. And as I said, they're super responsive if you've got any issues.
Many of you have probably heard about App Store optimization and how it can help you get more downloads. There's a lot of demand for apps right now, so it's a really great time to give it a try. It's easier than you think. The folks at App Figures have easy step-by-step guides and intuitive tools which many indie developers are using to get more downloads. The guys who run it are indie devs who have a need and created the tool. 11 years later, it's an all-in-one platform for developers who want to get more downloads and make more money with their apps. Try App Figures for free, and if you like it, you can use our special code RNR3030 to get 30% off for the next 3 months.
That's awesome, man. So now that you've worked with React Native and, have some time to actually develop in it, do you think your next project is going to be native, or are you going to continue using React Native?
So I think we were already asking ourselves, even before we did the Covid Symptom Study app, if we should do React Native projects. And most likely, yes, the future for us is React Native. So to give you a bit more context about what we've been doing on the nutrition side, so we had basically two different apps for different use case. One is kind of helping people do a study, like a medical study. So it's about logging food, about having indications for when to do some samples, some blood samples, or just do specific things. And this app has been developed full native, both Android and iOS, because when you do a medical study, it's a bit hard to say, hey, we can only accept the people that are doing that have an Android device, an iOS device. And then we've got a free app that is more kind of the result experience, which was what we were still developing before we did the COVID symptom study. And that results experience is about telling you how good food would be for you. So basically, you can barcode scan food, you can enter your meal, and it would tell you, this is 75 out of 100, and this is the strengths and weaknesses of your meal, and all of that is kind of personalized based on if you did the study or some of the information that you gave us before. And again, that app was full native. But one of the things that we did toward the end of last year, beginning of this year, is since we're kind of still pre-revenue and trying to find exactly what that experience should look like, at some point we decided to stop the Android development and basically ask our Android engineer to switch to iOS, because we're not learning twice as fast by having those two platforms develop in parallel with exact feature parity. So fast forward, we ended up with an iOS app that was a lot more advanced than the Android app that is lagging by several months, which led to our experiment, which is if we have to rewrite this Android app, should we do it native or should we do it React Native, so that at least we've got the same code base. And now fast forward COVID Symptom Study app, one of the things, there's a few things where we had some doubts, or at least I had some doubts, which was, is the stability going to be good on React Native? Can we actually quickly iterate, which is the promise, but actually how does that work in practice? And all of that, we think we've got a very, very good answer, and we're very happy. And we can do quite pixel perfect UIs. The one thing we've not explored at all is kind of animations, but there, I know some very, very good series about that, from William Candillon on YouTube, that also gave me some good confidence that when we reach that point where we're actually polishing, we can do quite a bit of it very nicely in React Native. And in the end, as I said, we do have, the same code base for the COVID Symptom Study app for the two platforms. So we think ultimately for the trade-off, I think that the trade-off for us are going to be interesting, because by using React Native, we think that we'll be able to iterate a lot faster and interestingly have a lot more engineers working on the code base if necessary, which was also a promise, but wasn't entirely clear before we started doing the project. So basically, with native, we're basically down to one Kotlin engineer, one iOS engineer, because we're a small company. Whereas with React Native, we now have 5 people that can actually write it. And that gives you a lot more options going forward into, kind of feature you want to build, or how much you want to invest on the mobile front versus web versus, more backend if some of those engineers are full stack engineers. And that's really nice. So yeah, going forward, I think we're going to do a lot more React Native.
This whole thing's just kind of mind blowing when you actually take like a step back and look at it, because I think, if you were to look at the entire history of React Native and apps that have been built on React Native and released with it, you'd be hard pressed to find an example of a story like this where something was built so quickly, the decision was made to go with React Native so quickly, and so many users that quickly overnight, and so many lessons learned about what works, what doesn't work. And it's really just kind of like a testament to how awesome React Native is for just rapid delivery, rapid prototyping, rapid release. So it's just, I don't know. To me, it's just, this is mind-boggling. I don't know if it's as mind-boggling to you guys as it is to me, but I think it's super cool. And it's just wild to me to hear just all the lessons you've learned throughout this whole process, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting. I vaguely suspect, again, I'm not very experienced, but I vaguely suspect that 2 years ago, we would not have been able to achieve that at all. And one of the things that really, really helped us kind of achieving this very rapid development cycle with very little experience is Expo. Because that means there is a whole part of the ecosystem that we can just totally ignore. Like, linking, we don't know about it, basically. Like, that's definitely something that we should start, looking into when we build our nutrition app, and we're going to have to improve. But basically, all the native integration, like, we just don't need to worry about it. Or push notifications is also something that have been dealt through Expo. So I know that there are some services such as pushers or things like that basically also do the abstraction between the Apple ecosystem and the Android ecosystem. But I suspect that, again, like 2 years ago, I'm not entirely sure that was like an entirely solved problem. So I think the learning curve 2 years ago would have been like a lot harder and a lot more significant. And therefore, A, we would not have been able to release something as quickly as we did. But B, it's possible that we would have been a lot more afraid about it. And therefore, kind of wonder a lot more about whether that was a good choice or not. But I could be wrong. As I said, I'm not super experienced with what the ecosystem was 2 years ago. So I'm just guessing.
Yeah, and I wonder what's, like in the future, how much more it's going to be. Like me and Tim were talking the other day about how React Native is now on Mac OS, and it's already been on Windows. So I think it's going to go after now. I wonder how many apps are going to be converting from Electron over to React Native. So I do wonder what the future is going to hold for React Native, like as a technology. Which, it made me, sit back and think like, wow, like I'm kind of happy that I'm in this, I'm in this technology and I'm actually learning this and I'm getting better at it every day, because it could open up more possibilities and more opportunities for, more apps to be built on, desktops and everything. So it's pretty exciting.
And speaking of the future too, I guess I'm kind of curious too, like, what do you see the future of the COVID Symptom Study app being? Because hopefully, the goal of humanity right now is let's get COVID to go away, which would be great. So obviously, we're all working toward that goal as a species, but then what becomes of the app later on? And do you see these lessons as something that you could apply? Like, because I guess where my brain is going is like, oh, you could build an app that is for pandemics in general, or something that could help the world track future outbreaks of something very quickly now that you have the framework ready to go. So kind of where are your guys' brains at on that whole thing?
So I think the first thing to realize that we did that work pro bono because, as I mentioned before, the main goal for the company is to build a product around nutrition. It's definitely not to do anything about COVID-19. We ended up doing something about COVID-19 because, by luck, we had probably the right set of skill at the right time. So we had the right partnership with universities, which kind of enable actually having the credibility to release something on the App Store. And we had quite a bit of experience with data privacy because we're already running medical studies. We had the backend experience. We had the mobile engineering experience, maybe not React Native, but basically we had a set of skills that let us, do something about it. And when the lockdown started in the UK, we just like, should we do that? And then we just thought about it for, 2 milliseconds. It was like, yeah, of course we should do that. That can help people. Why would we not do that? And especially we're a bit down in terms of morale, and, it's a bit hard to focus on your main product when actually you say, someone comes to you and say, can you help on COVID-19? So the first thing to say is that, we never had like a grand plan. And, at the end of the day, if the app disappear because COVID-19, we found a vaccine, that's great. We're happy with that. Job done. We can go back to developing our main product. Is that going to happen? Hopefully, yes. When? It's very unclear. And one of the things that was actually quite interesting, but that's more the scientists pushing than us, is that the scientists are super excited because they were able to do research at a speed that they never did before. If you do research, usually you assemble your course. It's going to take you months or years to assemble your course, and then every now and then you're going to ask them to do stuff, and then you're going to do some research on the next year on the data that you've collected, and that's basically what we did on the nutrition side. This is like a very, very slow cycle. They did, the same thing in 2 months with 1 million people, very quickly, and then 3 million total. So we still have about 1 million people reporting symptoms daily. So the data set is growing very, very quickly, which means whenever they've got like a new question, they just ask us to add it, we add it, and suddenly they start collecting data at a scale that is that they've never seen before. So they're definitely super excited about that, and some of them definitely see the potential for doing more of that in the future, even beyond COVID. So for any kind of outbreak, whether we will be the one doing that, I don't know. That's not really in our plans right now. I think our plan is to continue supporting this project, continue building the app and helping science, but also not necessarily invest the next 5 years a company on that, because that's a pro bono initiative, and we cannot survive if we spend all our resource doing that stuff. So we'll see. It's maybe we'll evolve towards what you described, but I wouldn't bet on it right this second.
Cool. Yeah, it's just such a unique, interesting experience that I'm sure lots of people, not even just the React Native community, but just medical communities and news organizations and stuff will be following you guys and paying attention to this for a long time. Super cool. But since we're kind of getting a little low on time, we can move on to picks now. So for users who don't know, picks are just kind of where we, the panel and our guests, get to talk about something or a few things that we think is kind of cool that we just want to share with you listeners. So I'll kick things off. My pick this week is a game that just came out. It's called What the Golf. Basically, it's just a little golf game, kind of similar to miniature golf, but it's really quirky, and it's kind of like, the only way I can describe it is like trolly. Like, it kind of trolls you and messes with you throughout the whole game. Like, there's the rounds, or the puzzles essentially are super quick, but they're always funny, and they're always ridiculously over the top in a way that you're just not expecting. So you should definitely check that out. It's a super fun, interesting game. I really haven't played anything quite like it, at least not in a long time. So that's my pick. James, what have you been into lately?
That game sounds cool, man. I'm going to go check that out. But also, I'm going to tell you what I picked, which is pizza this week. I've got a recipe for you. There's a guy called Kenji, who is a big internet sensation, or he was a couple of years ago when it was all kicking off. I think he's got a restaurant now. He has put together a foolproof pan pizza recipe. I really like pizza, and I'm too afraid to leave my house to get pizza in case it's covered in COVID. So now I'm making my own, and I highly recommend this recipe. If you can't get yeast, but you happen to have a sourdough starter, which I did, you can use a sourdough starter to substitute for the yeast, and you can make a delicious pizza in a cast iron pan. 100% give that one a go.
Pizza has to be the ultimate pick. Definitely one of my favorite foods. I actually just had pizza over the weekend for my birthday that I was celebrating. So great choice, James.
Ricky, on your pizza.
Yeah, man. Like pizza is always,
What's the best topping though? That's got to be worth a discussion.
Veggies, man.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's a controversial choice. I like it.
Well, I'm vegan, so I don't put any meat on it. So
right. Fair enough.
Might as well put veggies on. All right. So for my pick, it's going to be a mobile game. I've been putting in a lot of hours into this game. It's called Team Fight Tactics, so TFT. It's made by Riot. It's same creators that do League of Legends. It's still on desktop, but I don't have a fast PC or anything. And it just got released, I think like 2 months ago or a month ago on mobile. So I've been kind of stuck on that. It's been super fun. It's an auto chess. So it's a lot like chess, but you have characters and you put items in it, and then, you see them battle, and it's multiplayer too. So it's really awesome to play. And you're stuck on there for every match for like about an hour. So, get ready to kill some time playing that game. It's super awesome. I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, interestingly, my first pick when I was on before I was a host was for Underlords, which is like a similar game, which Ricky sees me playing at work all the time. But it's cool that TFT has come out on mobile now too, because that was like Underlord's big advantage was they had the mobile app out first. But yeah, TFT seems like it's kicking a lot of butt these days. Julien, what do you have for your pick this week?
So I've got a pick to go with James Pizza, actually. So I love video games, but actually I spend a bit more time those days just watching TV, just because it's hard with the kids to play video games. And one of the TV shows I've discovered recently is called The Bureau. And that's perfect because, as you probably figured out from my name, I'm French. So that's actually a French TV show that was recently appears on Amazon. Across the UK and I suspect in the US. And that's basically the story of an agent from the French Secret Service that come back from mission. And that's not all about any kind of gunfight, or it's not like Jack Ryan or anything like that. It's a lot more about the psychological aspect of, how to readapt to life, after spending, 6 years undercover. There's quite a lot of things that happen. So I'm basically just watching season 1. There's 4. So I'm sure I'm going to find a lot about it. But it's really well scored on the IMDb and other websites. So I'm really looking forward to the next few things with the wonderful pizza from James.
Always a good choice.
Awesome. So before we go, thank you for coming on today. It's been such a great conversation. Julien, where can people find you if they want to, keep up with what you're up to?
So they can find me on Twitter at Julien Lavigne, but be honest, I'm not checking Twitter that often. The best way to reach out to me is actually on LinkedIn. Just, type my name, connect, say that you're coming from React Native Radio or whatever, and I will super happy to answer. And then obviously they can follow what we've been doing on COVID-19 at covid.joinzoe.com. And I guess especially there's a lot of articles being posted about the research. So if you're interested about that topic, just check out the blog. We're posting every 2 days, like new discoveries. So that's definitely worth reading.
Awesome. And we'll put those in the show notes too, so users can, quickly find those things that you mentioned. James and Ricky, where can users find you guys?
You can, every week I say this, you can get me on Twitter. It's @SternJobName, and it's still a terrible handle. I'm going to change that one day.
Yeah, same here. I do Twitter as well, at Romero Ricky IO.
Cool. And guess you can find me at Tim Jung Dev. And also I'll note too that the podcast itself has a Twitter if you guys want to keep up to date on it. It's reactnative_RNR. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you next week on another episode. Thanks again.
Thanks very much for having me.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.